What is up, my fellow Chibits? Today, I'm here to bring all of you the weekly Tokyo Ghoul Read chapter review, this time on chapter 109, titled, Even the Pin. Now, this chapter is very sad, and that sometimes it makes me smile. In others, it confirms a lot about some of the things I've been questioning in the recent chapters of Tokyo Ghoul. And the big focus of this chapter is Urei, and his character, and what might happen from this point onward. Will he, survive? Will he overcome Donato? Or will he die? That is the big question that this chapter gives us all after finishing it. And to be honest with you, many were asking me to do a live reaction, and I felt like I wanted to kind of just discuss my overall thoughts. Instead of just doing a live reaction, I wanted to discuss my thoughts on this chapter and how I felt about it, because there's a lot of things in here that I just want to talk about and, just discuss that I've talked about before, but also how it confirms my suspicions I had. And on top of that, too, I mean, many of you really enjoy my reviews and stuff over live reactions most of the time, so I decided to stick with this. So, anyways, this chapter starts off with a flashback. It opens up with the capturing of Donato. Urei's father capturing Donato and throwing him in the Ghoul prison. And as we know, Donato's main motive right now to attack, Urei, and why he's putting so much pain on him, is because of what happened to Donato. Donato was captured by Urei's father, and then Donato, because he was angry and he wanted to get vengeance, he went after Urei, the son of the investigator that, turned him in. And we kind of know a little bit of details here and there that, the reason why Donato might be more upset with Urei than we already thought was probably because of Almon, but also because of the investigator, how Urei is related to him. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things on the table right now, but this chapter does confirm at least one thing. If there's one thing we can confirm with, the first start, the beginning part of this chapter, is that Donato cares deeply for Almon. He really cares for him, because as he's getting captured, as he is being turned in, he has the suppressants being put into his blood, he's going unconscious, you see his Kagane just breaking down into the crosses, you see where he says, Kotaro, and that's, Almon's name, and then he passes out and he's captured, and eventually the investigators, they find Almon underground, and that shows one thing, that Donato, even though we don't know a whole lot about him, he is a mystery, just like a lot of characters of Tokyo Ghoul. We can at least confirm one thing. He does care about Almon very, very much, and he does think of him most likely as a son. They may not be related by blood, but he does care about him. And I mean, we already knew that, somehow Donato did care about Almon, because he didn't kill Almon when he was a child. He left him alive, even though Donato was someone that would, kill and massacre children and eat them. Even when Almon, discovered his secret, Donato was completely fine with it. He's like, you can live the lie alongside of me, and he didn't kill Almon right then and there, so it showed that Donato did have some form of compassion towards, Almon, so he cared about him. And this once again confirms that. Even while he was being, imprisoned and all that, and he was getting turned in, he still cared for him. And I mean, we saw the interactions with Almon and Donato throughout the, entirety of part 1 of Tokyo Ghoul. And we also seen Donato and how he, treated Sasaki. And I mean, if we really think about it now, it makes a whole lot of sense now why Donato treated Sasaki like he did in part 2. I mean, let's think about this, okay? If this does confirm that, Donato does care about Almon, that would mean that Donato respects people that, is nice to Almon. For instance, it's like this. A father watching over his son or child or whatever, and he notices that his child has a good friend. A very good friend. He respects Sasaki, most likely, / Kaneki, because, Kaneki was the type of person that was trying to show Almon the correct way of how the world really works. And so maybe that is why Donato showed so much respect towards Sasaki in part 2. Even though he was acting the same way, kind of how he would treat Almon, that is actually necessarily a good thing, because it showed that Almon might respect, Kaneki in some way, and that's what we clearly are seeing here. If Donato really does care about Almon like he says, and what we see here going on in this chapter, but also how, things were taken away from him, and he was very upset, and then also seeing how he treated Sasaki, all the things are starting to make sense why he did that throughout part 1 and part 2, and so, Yeah, I mean, it makes more sense now when you think about Donato's character, but on top of that, though, we need to think about this, too. Donato clearly knows a lot. He knows about what goes on in the world. I mean, he's always been someone that has a lot of information, even though he's been imprisoned inside, the Ghoul prison for a good long time. He knew a lot of information. He had all of it at hand. He knew things he shouldn't honestly know. And the main reason for it now is because we do know he's a part of Clown. We also know he has some good connections probably with Furta and all that. So the main thing is that's why he was getting all his information. But on top of that, though, we know for a fact he has to know about Amon, what happened to him. We know for a fact, because, I mean, we gotta think about what Donato said to Kaneki/Sasaki in part 2. He's like, you'll meet someone that will remind you of what you need to do, like you'll remember your past. And from what we can, assume is that Donato is talking about Amon. And now this makes so much more sense. Donato knows what has happened and been happening, and most likely he knows the outcome of what has happened to his son, Amon, and he probably has heard of who has actually caused this, Psycho, but also Ure, and maybe this is also why he's taking out his aggression, but maybe, he might want to take his aggression clearly out on Psycho if he ever sees her. But for now, though, I just want to state that it's very fascinating just seeing Donato's character kind of slightly dived into at the beginning of the chapter. It just confirms a lot. I mean, we kind of already knew he cared about Amon, but this confirms he definitely does, especially with his interactions with Kaneki throughout part 2, but also Amon in part 1 after he was already imprisoned. So, it's just a little detail, and I really appreciate Ishida went out of his way to do something like that. He didn't need to spend time on that, because we kind of already knew, but I'm glad he kind of decided to confirm it at the very least with this chapter, and letting us know that Donato does have a heart. Even though he's sadistic, he's evil, and I'm not saying we should look, past all the evil shit he has done. He is not a good man in that regard. Oh, hell no. However, I do say that he is not completely evil, and this is once again one of the big things about Tokyo Ghoul. Not all characters are like black and white. Most of them are completely gray, and once again, this is kind of how you view that. Even though he might be, majority of himself, he might be evil, he does have a kinder side to him, and that's what we see once again. So Ishida making another morally gray character in some ways, even though, like I said, he's mostly evil, he still has some good sides to him. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that little aspect of this chapter, the way Ishida did that. But anyways, let's talk about this scene in general. So, Donato, he got taken down. And we do know Donato is pretty fucking ridiculous. I mean, this man's Kagane is just out of this world. I mean, we have never seen a Kagane look quite like what we see Donato's look like. It has, a bunch of crosses all in it. We know he's a priest and all that, a Catholic priest, and, he's in the church. So, I mean, having his Kagane taking the shape of a cross does make sense, but it's a very unique looking Kagane. I mean, we do know that thanks to your imagination, you can determine the shape of your Kagane. You can change the shape of your Kagane depending on your mental state because of how we see, Kaneki's Kakuja in part 1, but also we do know that you can actually change it willingly because of, your imagination, and that's what's happening here. The actual Kagane shape that Donato uses is because of how he envisions, it, for instance, as a cross, and seeing Ure's father take him down, it's impressive. I mean, we know Ure's father's dead because of what happened with Al and stuff, Eto at the end of part 1, but it's still really impressive to see Ure's father do something this, skilled, like just go in and taking down Donato, because I highly doubt Donato wanted to be taken down. Let's just be point blank honest here. I just do not believe Donato wanted to be captured. I mean, I don't think he would go out of his way to try to get vengeance and, go after Ure if he wasn't angry and didn't want to be taken to prison in the first place. And, I mean, I feel like there's more going on here. But, I mean, we have to think about this, too. Clowns are actors. They do fuck around a lot. So, maybe he's not really mad with Ure's father. Maybe not. I mean, who knows? Maybe he wanted to get in prison and this was all a big plot that he's been trying to do for many, many years now, and that's why he didn't get executed. Who the fuck knows? Just the point is that at this time, I just do not think, from the information we already have, that he wanted to be captured. So that would mean that Donato went all out and Ure's father did take him down. So, well done. Well done, Papa Ure. You did a good job. You did a good job taking down Donato. But can the son live up to his father and surpass Donato? That is the question. Regardless, though, there's something very interesting about this, first page, and that is the handcuffs that are used on Donato. As we know, the suppressants, RC cell suppressants, are constantly used on ghouls, especially when they're in prison, and that's how they kind of keep them in line and check for they can't rebel, break through anything, walls or whatever, use their cognate. It keeps them in check. They're constantly drugged. And as we know, majority of the times when they try to insert this drug, it's through the eyes. We've seen it through with Jason and all that. We know it's usually through, like, the eyes or maybe inside the mouth or something. That's usually when they try to inject something like it. But I really like the contraption we see here in the first page. The handcuffs, and when you see some form of handcuffs with, like, where you can insert the syringe inside of the hand, and if you look very closely at Donato's hand, you see, like, a vein pulsing up, so it seems like, they're inserting the suppressant into his vein, and you see it pulsing on his hand. So, interesting stuff. This is something I don't know it has been shown before. I could be wrong about that, so don't quote me on this, but I don't think this was ever shown before, like, these type of handcuffs. Now, like I said, I could be wrong with that, I could be forgetting, there's quite a bit with Tokyo Ghoul, there's just so much information, so if I am forgetting these handcuffs, please forgive me, but I think this is the first time we've seen something like this, and I feel it's very weird, Ishida going out of his way to kind of emphasize that in this chapter. When Ishida dedicates an entire panel to emphasize, like, handcuffs and the suppressants, something's going on here. I mean, we gotta think about it like this, okay? What is the main goal right now in present time with Kaneki's group? Finding the RC cell suppressants. That's what they're trying to find right now. And then you see an emphasis on these handcuffs to the, how they insert the suppressant inside of Donato. There's a lot of emphasis on that. So maybe this is hinting at what might happen to Kaneki's group in the future. I mean, it's some very shady shit going on with Kaneki's group right now because of, that report and stuff and how the RC cell suppressants were moved around. Something very shady is going on there. So, I mean, maybe these handcuffs are hinting at whatever's going to happen to Kaneki's group. Who the fuck knows? Anyways, let's move on to the next page. So, now that I've covered Almond and all that, I could talk about Urei and his situation with Donato. So, Urei, he's a character, as I've said many times, when the series of Tokyo Ghoul Re first started, I didn't really like his character. I mean, I didn't like his personality. I'm not saying he was a shit character, I just didn't like his personality. That's how I was when I first started reading Part 2. And over time, he's grown on me as a character because I cannot deny how good his development is. He's went through so much throughout, the Nutcracker, to what has happened to Shirazu and Noro, to, also with his father, and then also, what happened with Sasuke and what Sasuke said to him, and then now this. I mean, he's been through so much development that is just absolutely ridiculous. And I have to say, out of all the characters in Tokyo Re, when it comes to the QS squad, he's probably one of the most developed characters yet. I mean, you could say Mutsuki might be one of them, but I do say Urei's probably the highest out of all of them. In the entire QS squad, he's definitely the most developed. I mean, he's been through so much, and what we're seeing going on here in this chapter is, once again, another big crucial point for his character. Either this is going to make or break him as a person. Either he's going to develop past this and progress as a person, either good or bad thing, or he's going to die. One or the other is going to happen, and that's what Ishida's been constantly doing with his character throughout these mini arcs of Tokyo Ghoul Re. And once again, this is what is popping up. Can Urei surpass his father? Can he become greater than his father? Can he become a better investigator than he ever was? But at the same time, though, will he achieve it by sacrificing what he has, his humanity, to become a full ghoul? And we know he has 2 Kakugans, so, I mean, we know he went full-on ghoul, and it's not to be mistaken for a half-ghoul, which I'll get into that very soon. However, Urei right now, he's going through a crucial moment, because even if he survives Donato, and let's go on a limb here and say either Urei beats Donato, or Donato's like, okay, fine, I'm done messing with you and fucking up your life, I'm just gonna get the hell out of here. Let's just say that happens, okay, and Urei gets to live. The main thing that pops up now, the next conflict, is will CCG allow him to be a part of their organization? Will they treat him like a ghoul, or will they, treat him still like a member of CCG? Because after what has happened to Kaneki and how he rebelled against CCG because, he was kind of like a ghoul, a half-ghoul, I wonder how CCG will feel about, Urei being a full 100% ghoul. Will they continue to allow him to work with CCG? Or will they throw him in prison? Or will they execute him on the spot? So that's another, big hill that Urei's going to have to overcome if he does survive Donato and gets out of this alive. He has to overcome that next. So, I mean, there's just a lot of things right now that this moment is playing a big part to. I mean, what's going to happen with his character? Is he going to die? Or is he going to go down the path of being a ghoul and having to eat, humans to survive? A lot of questions I have about that. But anyways, let's talk about the inner mind and what is also happening in this chapter with Donato just completely tormenting this man. We know Ure was completely stabbed straight for the stomach and it went out his back in the last chapter, and he's down, kind of. And Donato might assume he might be already down and not willing to get back up. But to actually go even further, he grabs Ure by the head, where his hair is, the back of the head, and drags this man on the floor. Automatically, that's gonna hurt a hell of a lot. Just having someone grab you on the head where your hair is and just pulling you, holy shit, that is painful. I don't even want to begin to imagine how painful that is, just being dragged like that, especially with someone that is that aggressive and that angry. We know for a fact this man is putting a lot of pressure on Ure's head right now, just that probably does not feel good at all. But on top of that, he grabs Ure and just starts dragging him through the fucking window. He's breaking through glass. He's actually bending the actual window, the frames of the window. Look at page 5, and you will see with the way Donato is grabbing Ure's head, he is dragging him through the window, and you see the actual frames of the window bending, and that looks like fucking metal. It's actually bending while Donato just drags him through it. He's just pulling him through it and breaking Ure's head through the freaking frames of the window. That has to be, oh my god, that has to be so fucking painful just to see something like that. Just to see it in this panel alone, you know that's painful. Just having your head dragged through glass, metal, and all that, the frames. Holy shit. And then slams your head up against the floor once he is done with you. Savage. Freaking savage. Is Donato, oh my god, this man is savage doing that to Ure. But on top of that, Ure even states inside of his mind, he says, it hurts so much that I can't even feel it anymore. That means he's just had so much pain applied to him. His body is just completely canceling out. It's like his nervous system is all out of whack. It's like fucked up and shit. His mind is just all messed up because of all these emotions he's feeling. It's crazy how this man says he hurts so much that he cannot even feel anymore. That just shows you how much pain he is in. And there's cases in real life where people, they experience so much pain, they just can't feel anything anymore because they're about to just pass out. It's that excruciating. And Donato doing something like to this man, it emphasizes how painful it was. Anyways, after he's on the ground, Ure starts to think about everything, the people that has died, in his life. Everyone that's died, his father, Shirazu, and, Higi's, uncle, and also maybe Higi himself, and maybe him. He thinks in his mind about death. He thinks about everyone that has died. Well, he end up like that, and, you see these lifeless eyes as he looks up, and he doesn't even know what to do, because like I said, he can't even feel pain anymore. It's just like he's about to go unconscious completely because he feels like he can't move on. And he's about to knock out, as you can see the way his eyes are just lifeless. He's thinking about he's about to die, and he has a quick flashback. He thinks about his father in his final moments. And his father's like, you'll be an investigator, and Ure's like, I want to be an investigator just like you. And his father's like, it's okay, I'll be glad to work with you when you're older and all that. And the sad thing is that Ure could never work with his father because, his father is dead. And he starts to cry. You see the tears in his eyes as he remembers his father. And he can no longer have that dream with his father being able to work with him and be an investigator. You see the sadness in him, and as he realizes he's at death's door. But then, on his final thoughts before he probably goes unconscious, he wills himself before he goes unconscious. Donato, the ghoul my father captured. My father went all out to catch that ghoul. And then you see Ure starting to repair himself. You see his, his actual RC cells, they're working and trying to fix his body, his wounds and all that. So, what this is that Ure's frame just broke. All of his frames just broke. That means he now has full access to all of his ghoul capabilities. And this isn't something that just came out of nowhere. We have been very, very aware of the frames of the QS since the beginning of Tokyo Ghoul Re. We are fully aware of this. This isn't something that just popped out of nowhere. Ure is getting a random ass power-up or something. This is something we're very, very aware of. This is, you know, frames. We know about the frames, and if they all break, they have full access to their strength. And that's what we're clearly seeing here. Urai's frames have now broken. He is now becoming a full ghoul. That means that his, you know, regenerative, you know, abilities are going to be increased, along with his Kagane's power is going to be a hell of a lot more powerful. And what's driving him in this moment is just his rage, but also how he wants to become like his father. He wants to overcome Donato like his father did, and that's what he's pretty much stating when he's getting back up. He's rising back up. He's wanting to overcome his father. And that's what is driving his character right now. And what's interesting about this is, as Urei gets back up, and you see just blood coming out of his mouth, Donato smiles. He has his mask and all that. He's just looking at Urei. You just see how he's just happy this man's getting back up to experience more pain. And he's like, oh, you can still fight. He's like, this will be a nice little opportunity to put on a show. And he puts his mask back on. You see his Kagane come out. And it just seems like he's very happy to see this. And I feel like the reason why Donato's happy, it's not the fact that Urei is getting back up to just experience more pain, but also because Donato realizes what type of person Urei is, and also how he has been, you know, a QS. That means he can actually access, you know, ghoul abilities, and if, you know, he breaks all his frames, he will be in the world with Donato, and Donato realizes that will completely fuck his life over, and maybe that is why Donato is happy. He's like, he pushed him to this point to where he will become a ghoul, and I think Donato might feel like, hey, it's not actually the greatest vengeance to kill this man, but probably the greatest vengeance is to make this man suffer and realize he can't do shit about it. He's now a ghoul. He can never go back. Maybe Donato, he wants that. He's getting excitement from that because he realizes if Urei does become this and he doesn't die, he has to deal with it for the rest of his life. And maybe that's why Donato's doing it. He's pushing him to that point. And so when he's like, you know, I have an opportunity to put on a good show, it just, he's enjoying this because he realizes he's getting what he wants. Anyways, though, Urei's Kagane starts to pop out. Now, this is the very strange thing about it. The Kagane popping out of Urei, I'm assuming it's Urei's Kagane because of the structure and all that, it looks like a dying plant, or roots. That's exactly what it looks like. It looks like a dying plant slash roots. Maybe, gonna go on a limb here and say, maybe even the parasite, like the fungus that Sasuke talked about a very long time ago. You remember the fungus he talked about? How, you know, it can come out and it's actually in real life that type of fungus. How it's like makes zombie ants. Maybe that's, you know, similar to that. I mean, the actual design of this Kagane reminds me of that. It reminds me of that fungus that I talked about a very long time ago. But also, it looks like maybe a dying plant or something. It maybe is something like that. And, I mean, as we do know, your Kagane, it takes the shape of your imagination, your mental state, so to say. And maybe because of, you know, Urei's mental state and why his Kagane looks like it does, you know, with, you know, the shape and how it looks like a dead plant or something, maybe roots or, you know, maybe even fungus, maybe that's just how he feels right now. I mean, imagination plays a big part. And so maybe that's what Ishida's trying to imply, that type of symbolism with Urei's character, how he just feels dead inside or something. Regardless, though, the actual panel with his eyes drawn, Ishida. That's a fucking good panel. That's a fucking good panel. I love the way the eyes are shaded. I love just the marks all over his face with the shading. It looks so good. Probably by far my favorite panel of the chapter. Just seeing this emphasis on Urei's eyes and how his eyes are now full Kakugan and he says goodbye. I love the design of that. Very good shit, Ishida. Very good artwork, and I love that. Urei has a lot of good face reactions. If you think about it, he always has good facial reactions. Anyways, moving on to the next segment, let's talk about the Kaneki situation. So, even though many were speculating that Kaneki might help out Urei because he got on a train, it might lead him to where Urei is, that's not going to happen. Urei is on his own, he's by himself, and he's not going to be getting any help from what we can assume right now. He's got to deal with his own problems. But things move on in the world in other situations that people are completely unaware of. Kaneki finally makes it to where Ayato and Kuro and Sato, we see Kaneki finally meet up with him. And he's like, sorry to keep you waiting. You see the stress in his face. You can see how his hair is a little bit ruffled and all that because he's been trying to get there as fast as possible. It just shows you that the V agents really were crazy when they were going up against Kaneki. He was really stressed trying to deal with, you know, V. But also, when you take a trip on top of a train, obviously it's gonna fuck up your hair. I mean, you gotta think about that. I mean, he was on the top of a fucking train, going really fast. That's gonna mess up that slick back he's got. So, yeah, to be expected. Anyways, next page, he just talks about why he's late and, like, what took him so long. He's like, I was on a train. And I love the little panel of how he said, I was taking the train. And Kuro's like, huh? And in her mind, she just sees Kaneki with the fucking mask and shit. He's in the fucking train. That shit looks so funny as hell. Just think about that for a second. Someone like Kaneki that is a most wanted criminal right now, just getting on a train with his mask on, near, like, civilians and shit, it would look very awkward, and just Kuro thinking in her mind, like, huh? On the train? It was so funny, I just like the face. I love the face of Kuro, just the way she just gets her eyes, she's like, huh? And you just see Kaneki behind her. Like, okay, I don't know if anyone, you know, enjoyed that panel as much as I did, but that was probably by far one of my favorite panels, just for comedy-wise, just because of the way Kuro was like, huh? And her face reaction just speaks so many words without even saying anything. Anyways, though, we get into the serious stuff. They finally are trying to raid the lab and trying to get the RC cell suppressants. And Sato is already way ahead of them. He's already knocked someone out, and he's using their eye to be able to enter inside of the lab. Everything seems to be going rather well. You have it to where they actually... Okay, I was thinking of this when I was reading the chapter. Now, I'm not saying this is what it means or anything. I'm just saying my own personal thoughts, like my 2 cents. When you see, you know, our characters, you know, Kaneki, Ayato, and you see Kuro and Sato, they're dressing up in, like, the lab uniforms and stuff. They remind me of, like, the Stooges. I'm like, yo, these guys are the fucking 3 Stooges. Instead of 3, though, it's 4. Just seeing them, like, walking inside and all that, trying to dress up. I'm like, it's pretty fun. Just look at Sato's face. Just like the way he has the hat on and shit. It's backwards. And he's like, he? You just see his face looking at us, the readers. I just like the way it looks. It's very funny. But regardless, though, everything's going well. They're managed to sneak in. And we see Sato remembering Akira. He really wants to help her out. And we do know he cares a lot about Akira right now because he realizes how he's been acting in the past and how she's, you know, stuck her neck out for him, and he wants to help her and, you know, pay her back for what she has done for him. And so that's kind of the whole motivation right now. Sato's trying to become a changed man, trying to better himself. And along with, you know, Sato remembering his past and remembering what's going on with Akira, Kuro and Kaneki have a surprising convo, which I'm very, very happy with. I'm glad Ashita decided to add this in, because I was wanting to see something like this. It's something I wanted to see for a very long time. It's not something I needed, but I wanted to see a combo between Kuro and Kaneki, because Kaneki and Kuro are very, very similar. Like, okay, Kuro, she's a half ghoul, as we know. Well, she now has 2 Kakugans, which is very similar to Urei now, which that's very mysterious too. Just 2 Kakugans for a half ghoul, it just shows you how different the QS surgery is. But we do know Kuro has, you know, 2 Kakugans as well, completely different from what Kaneki is. Maybe that's why, you know, Dr. Kano calls, you know, her a failure, because she has 2 Kakugans instead of, you know, 1 Kakugan. But regardless, though, of that, this convo, it talks about how Kuro is reminded of Dr. Kano's lab. How all of this right now reminds her of, you know, Kano's lab. And, you know, just how, you know, she feels about Kaneki and how Kaneki feels about her. And, I mean, like, how she was jealous. Even though she doesn't like Dr. Kano, like, she doesn't like him, she still admits she was jealous. She was really jealous that Kaneki was always looked at as the masterpiece, while, you know, her and Shiro were always looked at as failures, floppies. And she was really jealous about that, because, I mean, she was never what Kaneki was. Even though Kuro, in all reality, she is a very strong ghoul. You can't really say she's weak. Kuro has proved time and time again, you don't underestimate this girl. She'll wreck a bitch. So Kuro is not weak. However, in Dr. Kano's eyes, she's a failure. And she admits she's jealous, and she actually finally tells the truth to Kaneki, and Kaneki finally hears. Even if Kaneki already knew, he was already well aware of how Kuro felt about him, it's good just to have it out in the open, to, you know, break, you know, the actual ice between these 2 characters. And that's what she's trying to do. And she goes along the lines of how, you know, they put their life on the line for the surgery, but they were still considered and treated like failures. Kaneki's like, but you weren't a failure. You weren't. You were not a failure, and, you know, people who mostly ignore your existence are in no position to say, you know, you're a failure. And I truly appreciate that line from Kaneki, because Kaneki comes from his own experiences of life, you know, people ignoring his existence or being used, mistreated, whatever. It's a word of wisdom and advice from Kaneki towards Kuro, and only someone like Kaneki could really make something like that. Those words have so much weight behind them, and the way he says that to her, it's not that he's looking down upon Kuro, it's not that he's having pity, it's not that, you know, he's trying to make her just feel good right now. He's not doing that at all. He actually is just stating the honest truth from his own experiences in life. He wants Kuro to understand, and he's not trying to make her, you know, feel like, oh, he's just saying that. He does mean those words. He does care about Kuro, and he feels like no one has a right to, you know, say you're a failure if they just ignore your existence for the most part. So, good man Kaneki talking to Kuro. So, seeing these two characters have a convo, just nice. It's very nice. I mean, overall, if you look at it, at the end of the day, it's nothing relatively important to the chapter. Like, I mean, it might be in the future, but right now, though, it's nice seeing two characters that we know are very similar because of, you know, their connections. Now they finally can talk and have this, you know, convo, get their feelings out in the open. So, good shit, Ashita. Good shit. I like that. Okay, so, next page, they get into the lab, and they're looking for, you know, the RC cell suppressants, and they've been completely moved somewhere else, which is very, very, very suspicious. Like, wow, that's suspicious. Like, yeah. That should not... I'm gonna say right now, obviously a trap. For the RC cell suppressants to be moved, but then on top of that, you have this logbook of a researcher on the fucking table in the middle of a room, and it tells you where to go. It's so obvious. It's a freaking trap, and I don't think Kaneki is that dumb to not realize. I don't think he is. I believe Kaneki is a very intelligent fellow. I don't think he'll fall and walk into a trap. He's probably very aware. But it's very weird how the RC cell suppressants were completely moved before they even got there. And no one really should know besides, as we know, one person that is not associated with Kaneki. So there's a likely possibility, since that known associate is part of Clown, that there could be a trap here or something else going on. We'll have to see where that goes. But for now, though, yeah, obvious trap is obvious. So next page. We move over into the clowns. Very appropriate way to end the chapter, and this is a very simple discussion I want to have here. It confirms one thing, in that the clowns that have been attacking are in fact human. And I've already discussed this in links in my live reactions and reviews of recent chapters, that they haven't shown their cognate. They're obviously fucking human, or there's something else going on here. Mind-controlled ghouls or humans or whatever, something's going on. Like, something is very fucking off. How do you get that many psychotic people and not want to protect themselves? It just doesn't feel right. And it's finally revealed that behind the mask, there is a person, and it's actually a human. And to make it even more unsettling is the mask is all smiley and bubbly like a clown, but underneath you see stitches, and the mouth is mostly into a frown, like sadness, and you see a tear coming out of the eye. It just shows the complete opposite of emotions that you see on the clown's face. You can see this man is in a lot of pain. He wants to speak, but he can't. You just see muffled sounds coming out of his stitched mouth. And that would mean that if all of the people that are, you know, wearing these masks are stitched up, where is the sound coming from? Where is the sound coming from? Just think about this for a second, okay? If all of the people that are participating in this are going against the wall, clearly this man's doing this against his will. He's crying and he has his face stitched up. If all of them are like this, where is the sound coming from? My only assumption is two things. Number one, the mask. The mask they have some form of transmitter in them that has a voice coming through them, and someone's playing a very sick game. And I mean, as we do know, these clowns are working underneath Furta. And so we do know that Furta has connection to V, and V has connection to CCG and all that, Washus, and they have a lot of money. So if they wanted to supply a huge army and have, like, mind-controlled humans, you know, being forced to fight or whatever, I mean, being able to put transmitters in all the masks makes sense. But on top of that, though, we do know that Furta is connected to this. Now, throwing that aside, however, it could be something else, too. And I find it very funny, and when we do think about it. Who is a person that appears at the end of this chapter? Uta. Uta appears at the end of the chapter to confront Suzuya. And we know Uta, he's no-face. He's someone that can change his face and appear as someone else. And I've already speculated this in the past about what this possibly is, what this ability is. And we do know Uta's a mask maker. He makes masks and stuff. That means he's someone that hides behind many faces. And since he's no-face, no one really knows his face. Most likely, this man's actual Kagane might take the shape of mask. As I've already said, Kagane, they take the shape of your imagination, and since Uta is no face, and a Kagane can change its appearance or whatever, maybe Uta's Kagane, which could possibly be a Kakuja, just comes around his neck, turns into a mask. He can change his mask or his face at will, because we do remember, in the chapter when he was fighting, we know he put his hand over, or his hands over his face, and his face changed into Arima. We know for a fact. And so Uta can change his face at will, which most likely is an ability from his Kagane. And this plays a huge part because of what we found out about the imagination. And that might be what's happening here. So what if these masks that are all on these people are detachable Kagane? We do know about detachable Kagane. We do know Uta is a very big mystery. We don't really know much about his Kagane. We have no fucking idea. There's many theories and speculations as well when it comes to his eyes, too. Many have said that his Kakugan is always activated because he has crazy RC cells. This is something that's been discussed at length many times in the past with many fans of Tokyo Ghoul, and there's a lot of speculation that he's just that crazy of a ghoul. His RC cells are just so fucking high, that's why his eyes are always full, Kakugan all the time. It's not just him tattooing his eyes, but they're always like that. So maybe he has so many RC cells, he could just detach Kagane all on these people and then have a voice come out. We do know Kagane can speak. Look at Eto. Look at Kaneki. We do know Kagane can speak. Let's not even deny that. We do know that there is detachable Kagane. We already know that. We do know imagination plays a role in Kagane. We know that now. So, what's to say all these masks aren't some form of Kagane? A detachable Kagane taking the appearance of a mask, and maybe Uta or someone else is transmitting a voice for them. Because if all these people have their mouths stitched up, it doesn't make sense how they can talk full sentences. Just doesn't make any sense at all. Now, however, I do believe there is some ghouls a part of the clowns that are participating in this raid. Because if you go back a couple chapters, you do see some CCG investigators getting ripped apart by some of the clowns. Like, they get their entire arm just completely ripped off. And as we know, ghouls have increased strength. So that means that there is ghouls amongst them that are able probably to speak, that are just fitting in and hiding amongst the crowd for it doesn't look like anything is off. So maybe that's what's going on here, but I do think something very sinister is at work with the masks. Masks are definitely playing a huge part in whatever's going on here. If everybody is stitched up like this, then most likely something's going on with the mask. Either a transmitter or some form of detachable Kagane. One or the other. Because Uta pops up at the end of the chapter, no face, able to change his face, just, yeah. Anyways, let's talk about the stitches for a second. I find it very funny that the stitches on the mouth pop up with Suzuya. Because if you think about it, Suzuya, he's a character that does body modification as well. He stitches his own body. We know for a fact, this was revealed a very long time ago in part 1 of Tokyo Ghoul. He stitches his own body. He finds it as a form of, body modification. It's just how he goes about. It's like piercings and stuff. And you see emphasis, actually, in the chapter with this page. You see a panel right above when it does a zoom in on his mouth. You see Suzuya with stitches, like, 2 X's right below his lip. But then you see a zoom in, and then you see nothing there. And he says, "Hey, human." And so with him actually saying that, you can assume that Ishida's emphasizing the stitches. He's showing how different these stitches are compared to Suzuya's own stitches. Like, Suzuya, his stitches were willingly. He put them there willingly. However, this man did not put them willingly. He had them forcibly put on his mouth. He didn't want that. So I feel like that's what Ishida's trying to emphasize with these couple of panels right here. So let's talk about Uta. Uta appears, and we get to see a little bit of an image of his Kagane, and if we all know, if you do know, I think this is the first time we've actually seen Uta's Kagane. I don't think we've ever seen it before. I mean, we can guess at what abilities he has because of how he can change his face, but overall, we don't know his actual abilities, and he's a very, very big mystery as a ghoul. We don't really know his motives either. Uta's played so many sides when it comes to, you know, Amteku, to the clowns, working with Furuta and all that. Just this man has many things about him we don't understand. A lot of sides. And we don't know if he's really good or really bad. We don't know. Maybe he's morally gray like we see many characters of Tokyo Ghoul. However, this is the first time we have seen this man's Kagane. And this man... I'm scared. Because this is going to be a powerful dude. I know for a fact Uta's going to be powerful. And fighting Suzuya, I'm kind of scared. I'm very scared that this is not going to turn out really well at all. And also what Uta says, too. He's like, puppet without master. He's talking about, you know, Suzuya, how his strings were completely cut from his master, Big Mom. And, you know, yeah, it just... Yeah, well, we now know that... Uta is just talking about that. He's like, oh, you're a puppet that has their strings completely cut, you're without a master anymore, and now you're just roaming free, and all that, with no purpose at all. So, I do like Uta just trying to taunt Suzuya, and I wonder exactly how this fight's gonna turn out. But overall, good chapter. Good chapter, Tokyo Ghoul Re. I cannot wait to see where chapter 110 goes. Let me know your honest thoughts in the comments below, and I love you all so much. Please be safe. Chibi out.